So, we want you all to think back on the most transformative experiences of your life and ask yourself honestly, how many of them did you actually expect? Because we've both been through many different experiences in our life, and what we realized was that the ones that had the most transformative impact and the ones that lasted the most in our lives were the ones that we didn't actually expect. So that got us thinking, what is it about a transformative experience that makes it transformative? Is it the way we approach an experience that allows it to be transformative? Or do our expectations actually alter the way an experience can impact us?
We realized there's an important difference between expecting nothing and not knowing what to expect. The former assumes that you'll take nothing from an experience, while the latter acknowledges that you simply don't know what to expect. One closes your mind with an assumption, while the other keeps you open to the unexpected, and perhaps even the transformative. Now, the problem is that we rarely know the difference between expecting nothing and not knowing what to expect when we go into a situation. We're rarely conscious about which one we're taking with us. Now, we want to ask you, can you be more conscious about which one you're taking in?
So when I was 13 years old, I was living the typical early teenage life, playing hockey with my friends, getting ready for high school, and realizing, hey, maybe girls don't actually have cooties. Hey, Laura.
Oh, hey.
So one day when I got home from school, my parents completely blindsided me. We were moving to North Caicos, a small island in the Caribbean with a population of maybe 1,000 people. Now, some of you might think that that's not so bad, but to a 13-year-old, the island lifestyle and Caribbean just wasn't the dream. We arrived into the island, and we drove to our new home. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually walked into the middle of a dinner party only to have the entire room stop and stare at you, but let me tell you, it's a lot worse when the dinner guests are mosquitoes and you're the meal. So if that wasn't bad enough, the next morning I had my first day of school, except that when I arrived there, school was only a small group of what we refer to as portables. There were no halls, no locker rooms, no air conditioning, so basically there was no school. I spent 16 months on that island, and going into it, I didn't expect anything good to come out of it. I actually went into North Caicos expecting nothing, and that's exactly what I got.
We need to keep ourselves open to the experience. When you go into something expecting nothing, you're just assuming that nothing is going to come from it. If we keep an open mind, you will be more open to the unexpected, and the expectations won't cloud your judgment. When you go into something, coming up with these expectations, that actually influences what you're going to take out of it.
So we actually had the opportunity to do that just over a year ago when Seneca allowed us to go to the Education Without Borders conference in Dubai. Now, this was a conference that brought together 1,000 Emirati students along with 1,000 international students, some of which came from countries we'd never even heard of before. And they came to listen to some of the most prominent speakers around the world. Now, these included current and former heads of state, to CEOs of global organizations, to even former NASA astronauts and famous authors. Not only was this an unbelievable experience, but not only was this an unbelievable experience, but it was an environment that we're definitely not accustomed to. So we actually weren't able to create any expectations. So for the first time in our lives, we went into an experience without having any frame of reference or any expectation. And what we found is that actually allowed us to take in the experience and for it to have a lot more of an impact on our lives. So we want to ask you today, what kind of mindset did you bring into this event, knowing that it carried the TED brand? Millions of people have watched TED Talks online. Teachers even use it in their classrooms, and events like this are being held throughout the world. So now, anytime you watch a TED Talk, you create this expectation that it can potentially change your life. But let me ask you, is that expectation actually driving you towards the transformation, or is it actually limiting you from having that life-changing experience? As you sit here today, are you actually comparing these talks to what you had expected, or are you actually open to the ideas that are being shared?
So if we know that expectations limit an experience, then why do we create them? For the most part, our lives are pretty structured, whether we know it or not. Now, I don't want to go so far as to say that I'm a control freak, but like many of us, I need to know what's coming. I would map out situations, experiences, and even relationships with what I expected to happen because I resisted the situations where I didn't know what to expect.
If we know that an expectation can impact an experience, why do we create it? Maybe it's because the unknown is scary. We go through life venturing into the world, always trying to anticipate what comes next. And this forces us to create expectations. But why do we do that? Maybe it's because having a frame of reference, even if it's completely irrational, is better than not knowing what lies ahead. But I want to ask, what if we consciously tore up that frame of reference and went into each experience, each interaction, not saying to ourselves, I don't know what to expect. I'm going to evaluate this experience based on what it brings me, and not based on whether it lived up to or fell short of the expectation I had created. Because every expectation can potentially blind us to a lesson that the experience will give us. So, I'll admit that giving up, our greatest tool for going into the unknown, can be terrifying. But how much of a difference would that shift make in your life today?
Now, we're not here to tell you to never make expectations because being realistic, that's impossible, and expectations do have their value. But we want you to be aware of what might get lost in the shadows of your expectations. Expectations act as a shield from the unknown, a mask against what life might throw at us unexpectedly. But we want you to be aware of what might get lost in the shadows. We want you to sometimes, our point is that sometimes it's best to take off the mask and take what life throws at you right in the face. So let's choose to focus more on the experiences and less on the expectations. Thank you.
Thank you.